The champ is here.
We will definitely not shut up and dribble.
The champ is here. I must be the greatest. The champ is here.
I'm going to continue to stand with the people.
The champ is here.
I will not lose.
I'm a bad man. I shook up the world.
Yes. Welcome. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you are here with we. My name is EJ, and I got my mans.
MH.
Yes, he's the DB of the show, man. We are Black in Sports, having fun already, all right? We're giving a voice to the culture that won't shut up and dribble. Here, interviewing the best professionals in the game and in the boardroom. Covering it all, already laughing at it all, while providing a platform to be heard. So you know what we do around this time. We welcome our guests. So we're going to go full circle tonight, all right? So from CEO to managing partner of Aspire U, then his day job is Director of Alumni Relations for our Las Vegas Raiders. We have Devon Lewis-Buchanan in the house. Let's clap it up for him, clap it up for him.
Appreciate you.
Yes. So thank you, man, for stopping in. We about to get right to it. So how we started off, man, is a shoot your shot moment, man. This is where you went for it all, betted on yourself and said, yo, I'm going to go do this, win or lose. So you can give us a success story. You can give us when you fumbled the ball. Go for it.
Ooh, man. So many stories in that, in that category. I'll say just being where I am today and kind of how that started. So I guess I'll have to go back to my Ragin Cajun days and shout out to the Ragin Cajuns.
Yeah, we got them on right now for you in the studio, so you peek over at them now and then.
Absolutely. During my time there, I was blessed to get a scholarship offer, and it was the only scholarship that I received to go to the University of Louisiana. I had no idea where the school was or what the school even was. And when they came and recruited me at the time, all I knew was D1, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. So wound up going there, playing 4 years, 2-year starter, team captain, and going into my senior year, we had a brand new coaching staff, and we were picked to finish last in the country.
Okay.
Amongst pretty much all the schools and everything. And so we wound up going on a run, had a pretty decent season, wound up going to the first bowl game in school history.
All right.
And so we get to the bowl game, and at the time in my mind, I'm like, okay, they had me at the time like 5th to 7th round draft pick and all these different things. And, in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is the money game, right?
Absolutely.
We get to the field. We're playing in New Orleans at the Superdome, and I could just remember walking on the field. I get there, I stand on like the 50-yard line, and there was just like this voice that said, take it all in, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, this is the game. Like, you know what I mean? I'm in the zone, I'm locked in,
Mm-hmm.
and 10 minutes later, like I'm on the ground, and my knee is dislocated after my teammates fell on my leg. Pre-game warm-ups. Warm-ups. And so, I get to the locker room just trying to figure out what's going on with my leg, and pretty much I just had to just make, just take it for what it was. I couldn't play. Couldn't run, couldn't do anything, and so I had to sit there and watch that game, and we wound up winning the game, and that was, of course, big for the program. But,
right.
Obviously after everything kind of settled, reality kind of sunk in, and I was just like, well,
man,
what do I do now? Right?
Absolutely. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's
It's life.
It's life.
That's life.
Right? And, we get these chances at adversity, whether we want them or not, right? And it's just how we respond to them. So,
Absolutely.
Wow.
Devon, take me back to young Devon. Where did the foundation for sports start, your love for sports?
Ooh, man. My 4th birthday, my mom.
The 4th one, huh?
4th birthday. I
Okay.
still remember, I have a picture of it. My mom bought me a football. At the time, I was living in New York, and so nobody around me played football. Everybody was basketball fans. So I was born in Brooklyn, and, all my cousins and everything growing up, of course, they were always at the park playing basketball. And, when she bought me that football, it was just something that it just connected. You know what I mean? And so that was probably like my earliest memory that I could think of for the sport. I didn't know what the sport even meant. I just knew that ball meant something to me, right?
Uh-huh.
So, 4 years old.
How long you in Brooklyn?
I stayed in Brooklyn until I was 5, and then we moved to West Palm in Florida. And so, relocated at 5.
You had a lot of brothers and sisters, right? One of 6?
One of 6, yeah. Second oldest. My mom was a single parent. She's also a social worker, so that's kind of where
there you
I
go.
get a little of that foundation from.
Okay.
And I say she groomed me to be a social worker in a way, because she just seemed to always talk about her cases with me or something. I think that was her way of reinforcing, like, you know, I'm dealing with this kid who's locked up right now, and like, you know, hey, this is the direction you don't take. So
you don't, right. What
so,
not to do.
Right. So that was definitely a part of my upbringing.
Is there any other sports that you played, or football was just the one?
Oh man, I played everything.
Okay.
Did a little track. I wasn't a burner, but you know.
All right. Yep. So let's stop there.
Anytime track. So
Yeah.
What's your events? What's your events?
So I would do the 200. I would do the 4x1, and then it's kind of funny. So one of my track teammates and football teammates is actually his name is Tony McQuay, and actually he ran for the Olympics and won gold on the 4x4 team.
Okay.
At the 2016, I believe, Olympics.
Okay.
So when we were in high school, I was 1 year older than him, but you know, if ever he had too many events to run, they would make me run in his place. And so he's the fastest dude in the county. And they'll just plug me in, like, you get lane 4, hop in 400. And I'm like, hey, coach, I think I got 4 more races or whatever. I'm trying to just get out of it. And, man, I would run that race for him, come in dead last. And everybody would be like, man, why he got lane 4? I'm like, oh, so,
why they give him lane 4? That's funny.
He not going to like this, but I beat him once. He ain't going to like that, but I beat him once in the race. He ain't going to like it. We stayed after practice. Was in full pass, and I beat him in a straight up 60-yard dash. Yeah.
The 60-yard
Was
dash.
he hurting or?
It's funny because that whole weekend he would just text me like, "Hey, bro, we got a race. And then we got back to school on Monday, and he burnt me by at least 5-10 yards. So I don't know what it was that day, but I got one.
Yeah, he's still thinking about shooting the Olympics,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Suncoast Chargers, that was the high school you went to, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so talk to us about kind of just that element of the school, because it's going through some changes. So was it Suncoast when you went there, or because it became like a charter magnet school?
Right. So the school, when I got there, man, it was a very, I mean, academically, it was a very, very good school.
It was up there, right? Prestigious school. Like, I mean, like, looking for top rankings, like they're kind of school to like, hey, we was number 8, we're shooting for number 3.
I think my senior year we were ranked 3rd in the nation.
There you go.
For, I think it was like students who were completing coursework and how many college credits they had acquired.
Attained already.
Right. So I was going to, like, the valedictorian at the school was like a 5.7 GPA. Like, it was,
hold on,
it was ridiculous.
What kind of scale is that?
They took those weighted,
absolutely,
college course credits, and so I think you had to be in the top 100. You had to have a 4.0. Like,
wow.
It was crazy. I was in the bottom 10 of my graduating class.
I should have been a junior in high school.
The reason I went to the school actually was, I was just inspired by Devon Hester.
Yeah.
You know?
So definitely going to ask him, right? Yeah. Definitely notable alumni from the school.
Absolutely.
So, he was a track guy too, like more so.
he got
everything.
He's at everything, right?
Everything.
Did he hoop?
They probably wouldn't let him.
Right.
Because with track season and everything, but man, just athlete, legendary, yeah.
So you played safety.
Yeah.
Safety in high school, right? Mm-hmm. So how was that? I guess that's that speed that you were locking when you beat your boy in the 60-yard, huh?
I mean, to be honest, so I'll take you to my Suncoast days. My Suncoast days are very different from the Devon Hester days. So let's say that. So pretty much after one of the principals changed guards, we had a principal who was all academic. She didn't care anything about kids that were growing up in the area, because a lot of the kids that we were getting, were being bused from all these different places. So it kind of took away the history of the school, where it was really in a growing up in a adverse environment. And so when you took those kids out, they would bust those kids to other schools that wind up going to state and things like that, like a Dwyer High School and Palm Beach Lakes High School and stuff like that. So it was interesting when I got there. I think my freshman year we had a decent varsity team, and so I wound up moving up to the varsity team in the back end. But once I got in, everybody either transferred or they got kicked out. Right. So it gets to probably my senior year, I'm probably the 4th biggest person on the team at 180. Wow. Right? Like, I was the quarterback on offense. I was the tight end when we needed to complete a pass.
They called you Slash.
Everything. I mean, I think I played every position except for offensive line and defensive tackle. Started the game at every position in high school.
Special teams, everything.
Everything.
Turning
Hey.
kicks.
Returning kicks was the slowest returner that they'll tell you that. I had a little speed. I ain't gonna lie, but
Did you kick punts and field goals?
we always had a kicker. That's the part. Like we had a kicker. Like that was the one position that we could line
We
up
had that on
and
lock, huh?
man for man. We could go with the kicking game, but position wise, we didn't have those athletes, man.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
So the recruiting process, how did that work for you?
Oh man. I won. So in those 4 years, I won 5 games in 4 years.
That's
Yeah.
rough.
My senior year, we doubled up, so we won 2 games. And going into the recruiting aspect, like that was something that in my mind, it was like I always knew. Like I had this, like as a kid, I had a clear vision that I was gonna play football in college. Like it was just so clear. I would save all of when teams used to have those media guides.
Mm-hmm.
I still have them to this day. I had media guides just saving. I was like memorize these guys' names and their moms' names and like all this stuff just because I visualized myself doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so my senior year comes around, and season passes by. No offers, no interest or anything. I'm just getting those mailers, right?
Yeah.
And my coach at the time, he was a young coach and probably 10 years older than me. And there was an all-star game, and they didn't have me pick for this all-star game, but he shows up to like the picking the player ceremony, kind of like the draft, and he just maneuvers his way in there and just starts to give the gab. He just starts to talking, and he was like, "Listen, I got one kid. If y'all could get him in this game, we're good." And so I was the last person selected for that all-star game, and I go to practice. And I mean, I looked the part. Don't get it twisted. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, if you saw me from a distance, you're like, hold on, who is that kid? Right?
You had that getting off the bus
I
look,
mean,
right?
I could listen. I could fill out a uniform, all the stuff that you look for in a young, athletic kid that you can kind of just try to find a position for.
Right.
And so I go to the All-Star game. I'm playing safety, and the coach from the Ragin Cajuns, his name was Brian Jenkins at the time. He comes in and he's talking with my coach, and they're frat brothers.
Okay.
They're part of the same fraternity. They're both Omega Q, some Q. So
At least
they're
not twirling
talking.
candy.
Yeah, they're talking back
Shimmying.
and forth. Yeah, so they're having a conversation, and he's like pointing at me like, "Yeah, who's this kid? Who's this kid?" And my coach is like, "Hey, that's one of mine."
Right.
And so, my coach, he was taking me back and forth to practice. So on the drive home, he's telling me like, "Hey, this coach is kind of showing interest." And at the time, I was like, "Hey, man, a bunch of guys then came to the school and said the same thing." And he actually comes to the school the next day. And I remember, this is when we had to make our highlight tapes. Like this is
that's
this
right.
is right before air. This is I was in between the huddle and the so it was like right in that area. And so making my highlight tape during lunch and stuff like that. And so he pops in the tape and watches like 5 plays and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna offer this guy a scholarship."
Oh wow.
And I'm sitting in the locker room, but my coach is having a meeting with him. And then when he walks out, he tells me, and I'm just like, I don't even respond. He's like, "Hey, I'm giving you a scholarship," but I'm just like, "Hey, listen, until I sign the paper,
It ain't real.
right? It's not real." And wind up going on my visit. They ask you like, "Hey, you can't take any more visits if you commit or whatever." I'm like,
Right.
"Listen, I don't have no more options. So y'all got me, if y'all want me." So, and that was it. I wind up signing with the Ragin Cajuns.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you kind of led off with the shoot your shot moment that, you went there and just kind of really received a certain level of success. What was it like going back? You definitely showed a video going back to see your alma mater.
Man, that was one of those moments that I don't know. Like I always have this strong. For me, it was just always like seeing things before they happen. And
Okay.
It was just always like preparing your mind for something that may be to come. And so I always had this idea that I was going to go back and tell my story.
All right.
And I, of course, I always kind of have the time frames mixed up because I'm not in control of that. So I always thought it was like going to be years down the road.
Right.
And when they invited me to come back and just, speak to the players there about what it is about being a Ragin Cajun, like what is the culture about? And for me, being a guy who grew up in South Florida, not, knowing about the Ragin Cajuns, not having no idea before I got there,
Mm-hmm.
that to me just spoke volumes because it was like to get a guy who's out of state to come back and talk about, what it is that this program represents. That to me was like, it was powerful.
Dope.
And so to be able to speak to that and, tell the guys some stories and, also some of the guys that I played with we're on the coaching staff now. So, you know, it was cool to be able to kind of have that experience and,
Absolutely.
you know, now to see the success that the program has sustained,
Yeah.
you know, and it was really all from my senior year, pretty much from there, just changed the course of the whole program.
That's amazing.
You know, so. Yeah.
Trailblazer.
That's dope. And it's always different when you go back, right? You're like, man, hold on, we had these when I was going
Man,
there,
we,
right?
we was sharing socks, man. Like
Champion jersey.
Yeah, man. We had Russell, you know, like they got it made now. But
Right,
you know, that was the conversations that we would have in the locker rooms. Like, hey, when we come back, it should look different. You know what I
Right.
mean? And to
And
go
now it
back
is.
and see the new facility, and I mean, they have one of the best facilities in the country,
Mhm.
right? And then, so to go back and see them was like, man, we used to share ice tubs. Now they got the pool in the ground thing. You know, it's amazing to see.
These young kids, man, they got these. I had to backpedal in New Balances. That's what we
Right.
had, man. It's like, come on, I can't backpedal in these New Balances. There's receivers wearing Nikes. I got New
Right.
Balances on. So, what was your game? Describe your game for me. What was your game like?
Man, like on the field,
Yeah, your style.
man, I would say it was all about energy and passion. I mean, honestly, that's the only way I knew how to play the game. It was I was never, you know, they had me at linebacker. So when I got to Lafayette, I was at linebacker.
Right.
Okay.
I started off as safety, but when I got there, I probably gained 15 pounds in that summer, and
That freshman 15.
Everybody warned me. They said, "Hey, they gonna move you to linebacker." I said, "Nah, I'm Sean Taylor. I'm Sean Taylor. I'm Sean Taylor. They want a big safety." Week 5 of my freshman year, I wound up being in linebacker meetings, and I'm like, "Oh, this just for this game, right, Coach?" Yeah.
This
Check it out.
situational.
This is a package.
Just check it out,
This is a
right?
package.
This is the package for you to get on the field as a freshman. I
man.
never saw the back end again. So, you know, for me, it was like, all right, if I'm gonna be a small linebacker, and it's funny because like I was resisting gaining weight. I was resisting everything because I had hopes that they would put me back at safety. I was just waiting for that day. They were like, hey man, you 215, we'll put you back there.
Nice.
And so I had to play the game as a smaller linebacker, but you know, I just utilized what I had. It was really just instinctual, being able to just go out there and I knew that guys feeded off my energy. So I always remembered, like, if I make a play, if I don't celebrate, everybody's looking at me like,
What's up?
right. They're like, oh, okay. Like, we in the game. But if I'm, you know, they like, okay, well, I got to make a play because, you know, I'm coming to celebrate with you. So I would say that was majority of my game was really just based on passion. And then, you know, as I got older as a player, I started to study the game more. But I'm not going to lie, like I was a film addict. I would get the game tape, you know, look at it a little bit, maybe the day before the game. But it was just one of those things where it was just like, as long as I felt in control of what I can control,
Right.
then I felt like I could make plays.
They didn't put a neck roll on you or anything like that when they moved you up.
Man, nah, the thing was, man, I kept my DB swag.
Yeah.
Man. You couldn't convert me into no linebacker. Like I'll do everything, but you know what I mean. So
That's too funny.
yeah, I had to keep my swag going. You know.
Man. So really switching it up just because I just thought this was dope and it was important. So you had a chance recently to go back to Jamaica.
Mhm.
And that's like the root of like your family.
Yeah.
And it was the first time you had ever
Yeah.
went. So tell me, where'd that come from? What that
Man.
experience was like?
So this year for me was just, you know, the beginning of the year. I turned 30, you know, in January, and so every year that kind of comes around in January, I always think like, okay, I don't do New Year's resolutions and all that stuff.
But it's a reset though,
right. It's like when my birthday comes around, it's like, hey man, you got another year to get better. You know
When's your birthday, by the way?
January 12th. Yeah.
January 1st.
Nice.
See, I knew we was eye to eye, man.
Yeah, so you know,
That
Capricorn.
Oh,
yeah.
there y'all go.
Hey, man,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
knew that. That's that smooth. You know
that's
what
all
I
it
mean?
is. That's all it is. You
Yeah.
know?
Continue, please.
Yeah. But you know, I always wanted to go back to Jamaica. I always wanted to visit, and it just never was the right time, I guess, for me, because it seemed like every time that something was coming up, I had something else to do. So, you know, for me, planning that trip, you know, I got to go. My grandmother was there.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
You know, I had 2 of my siblings with me, and so you know, we got a chance to meet, you know, our family that we had never met before. You know,
Dang,
have
man.
conversations. I met my grandfather for the first time.
Wow.
Wow.
You know, and he actually when my mom moved to America, he wound up moving to Venezuela, right? And he's not Spanish speaking or anything. Like he's just a Jamaican guy. He's in the middle of Venezuela, but he wound up getting stuck over there because of the political stuff
Got
that was
it.
going there. So he wound up being there for 40 years.
Whoa.
And, last year, was the first year that we actually got him back in
Right.
Jamaica. So,
Wow.
you know, getting to meet him and, you know, just the excitement on his face when he met his grandkids for the first time, I think that was something that I'll never forget.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, going to transition, man. We want to get into the career, and we may pop back and ask some other things. But so you talked about the injury,
Mhm.
right? And you fought through that injury.
Yeah.
And you did have because being a high ranking or scouted as an NFL prospect, a draft pick. You fought back.
Yeah.
So you actually had a tryout with one of the teams, but I'll let you kind of tell that story and then transition into where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I had 3 months from the time I got injured to perform at my pro day. And that was like a window coming off a dislocated kneecap. Luckily, I didn't tear anything. It was just smooth dislocation. And they said they had never seen like a dislocation like that where you could just pop it back in, right? And so I started training and everything, and then I just felt comfortable. I was like, hey, you know, you just got to give it one more try. And went out there, and it's funny because I had a pro day like no other. The day before my pro day, I walk into our indoor facility, and there's a guy standing there, and everybody's surrounding him. I'm like, who is this? I walk up to the guy, it's Darryl Green, right?
Wow.
You know, Hall of Fame, defensive back for the Washington Washington full football team.
Yeah.
So Darryl Green's in there, and I walk up, and I'm like, you know, just looking at him, and he's like, hey, how you doing? I'm Deion Sanders. And I'm like, man, you Darryl Green, man. You know, so and I'm like, what is Darryl Green doing in Lafayette, Louisiana? So it turns out his son was actually at Southern. And his son was going to do his pro day with us since, you know, all the scouts were going to be there. So I'm getting ready to work out for my pro day. And, you know, I'm putting on my cleats and just trying to do some, you know, warm-ups. And he just walks over to me and was just like, hey, put your cleats on. I want to see something. Like, I just want you to, you know, show me what you got. And at the time, like, it's a longer story, but I'll give you the abbreviated version. So in the span of a week, I lost like 12 pounds, right? Due to some life situations that were going on, you know, and I went from 230 to like 218 in a week. And so I was going to try out as a linebacker for the scouts. But then when I lost that weight, it was just like, hey, you got to play safety. And so I really hadn't prepared to backpedal because I'm still coming off of a knee.
Right.
And, you know, me and him, we just working out, and he's just like, just teaching me about confidence. He was like, listen, man, when you walk into this indoor, I want you to act like you're going to hit your head on the top of the door.
Just the head high.
You know what I mean? He's like, just be confident. He was like, I don't care if you go out there and fall on your face, but just be confident. And so I go out there the next day. The biggest thing was the 40. I just wanted to run fast. So you know, I kind of cheated. I put some track spikes on.
I ain't cheating.
On the turf.
Hell no.
You know, they didn't know, but I had some track spikes on them, and you know, I wound up running 4.5 flat, and then I think my second time was 4.54.
Okay.
So, you know, I never really timed myself past probably my freshman year. So to kind of run a fast time with the scouts, I was like, all right, that's decent, you know. And then we did the pro day, and everything went well. And ultimately, I'm thinking, all right, maybe something will come up from the draft day. So the only team that actually spoke to me at the pro day was the Raiders. And so gentleman named Calvin Branch. Yep. And so it's funny because I still have his card in my wallet. I kept this card in my wallet for 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So Calvin came in and he gave me his card, and he sat me down. I did the Wonder Lick and everything in the hallway, and I'm like, okay, the
That's
Raiders.
crazy.
I'm like, yo, all right, yeah, the Raiders. And so draft day comes and goes, no call.
Right.
You know, I'm thinking, all right, free agent. You know, I'll at least be a free agent, right? No call. And then I get to the week of my graduation, and so I'm like, all right, well, at least I'm graduating. You know, and that, in my mind, I'm like, well, you know, I can't complain about no opportunities given. And I get a call the week of my graduation, and it was from somebody with the Raiders, and they were like, hey, listen, we want to fly you out for rookie training tryouts. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, but I got graduation on Saturday, right? And they were like, so you want to play in the NFL or you want to walk?
Right.
And I'm like, I'll be there. Just send the flight and everything, and, you know, fly out to Oakland at the time. And, you know, was there for 3 days. Got a chance to meet Willie Brown. That was the highlight of that trip, man. Just, you know, yeah, man. Just a genuine dude. He was at rookie training. Like, I would never think that a Hall of Fame guy like that would be at rookie training camp,
right,
or rookie tryouts. And so to see him there, he comes in the locker room, he's like, you know, going around the DBs, and he's like asking guys like, you know, Who am I? All right, and these guys like, I mean, they looking at him like, nobody could even guess. And I'm like, I looked at his face and he got down like in a little position, like in a little crouch, and I said, "Man, you Willie Brown." And he looks at me, he was like, "Shh, don't tell anybody else." Right. And to me that just stuck out from that whole experience. But it hurt. Getting cut. Pretty much, they brought us all in the auditorium, and it was 80 guys fighting for 8 spots. And,
Wow.
After I realized that I wasn't going to be there on the first day, I just, finished out my tryout. And, once it was over, it was over. But, I always felt, connected to the Raiders after that tryout. And, it was just a part of, my experience. And so I always kind of kept that, that relationship with the organization where I always kind of rooted for them, even though I wasn't a lifelong fan, but I just kind of always had that respect that they gave me opportunity.
And a connection.
Yeah.
So brings you to present day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you work for the Raiders.
Yeah.
And in your capacity, so you are a social worker by education, by
Yep.
trade, but you work in the alumni relations. So
Yep.
let's knock off the stigmas. Let's start with the
Yeah.
stigmas first, right?
Right.
Let's talk about how many stigmas there are for mental health, being a black man and mental health, and
Yeah.
just how you've even
Athlete,
all of it,
Yeah.
all that, and then how like people think a social worker, they're like, oh, you don't take somebody's kids, like.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how are you peeling back those layers of fighting? Is that an educational part and a part of your role?
I mean, for me, it was like a personal thing for me. Like, when I got in the field, that was my first job out of college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was looking for something, because I was expecting a son, and I was like, I got to get a job. And so I didn't even have enough money to apply to teach. And because they wanted, you had to pay money for fingerprints and all that stuff. I'm like, I don't even have that. So when I got, my first job was working with kids in foster care.
Mm-hmm.
And so helping them transition out to become adults. And, as I'm sitting there and I'm doing the work, like one thing that I realized was that, I didn't see that as my passion yet.
Right.
But I could be passionate and show up every day and be passionate for those kids. You know what I mean? And so it kind of just gave me this feel like, yeah, I'm not signing autographs, I'm not doing this, but these kids hold me to a high standard. And I think that was the one thing that kind of set in was like, they look at you like, you made it, when everybody in your family, everybody around you is kind of like, hey man, I wish you would have made it, And so I always kind of just stayed close to the field, and I grew in the field. And then after a while, I started to realize that, I am unique and what I'm doing, because I was always the only male, and I was always the only black male in every organization I was working in. And so for me, it was just like, the expectation was you got to do more. You got to work with the worst kids. You got to take on more. You got to do, more with less. And to me, it just became to the point where I started to burn out a little bit. So I wanted to, make sure that I was putting myself in the right positions to maximize not only my skill set, but also, the passion that I had.
Got you.
Yeah.
kind of hitting on the stigmas. I guess I want to get back to the start of your career in social work. Obviously, dealing with injury. With football, I think we all look at it as when somebody's injured, we say, hey, we think of fantasy football, oh, he's out, let's just get a replacement. Or, it's the nature of the game. That's part of the game. Injuries is part of the game. Let's just move on. But nobody ever really focuses on the person that's injured. It's like everything moves on, and there's still this person that's injured.
Right. Next man up.
And
right?
I guess there's a mental struggle, obviously, with being injured and just not knowing, what to do next. So bring me back to that part of Devon where he was like at this point where, hey, football didn't work, but now I got to go to the next level, and that mental strain that it might have had on you.
Ooh, man, that was probably, I would say, that defining moment, right? Because in my mind, I had to make a decision, and it wasn't a decision I had to make for anybody else. It was like a personal decision where I had to decide, are you going to continue to pursue football, like work out, try out, still do all that process, or you want to choose like fatherhood? And it was, a lot of people say you could do both, but at the same time, I didn't grow up with my father. So for me, I had made promises at 5 years old that I was going to be there for my son. Like all these different things that I said as a kid, I wanted to make sure that I made good on those promises. And at the time, as I kind of got into, working and just being around my son full time, I was like, I wasn't happy with the life that I had. I was happy that I was, just something, I was just being there. Like I was just present. Right. And so a part of me always felt like I was compromising myself, but at the same time, I don't regret it at all, because for me, it was that learning curve that everything is not always going to go your way, but at the same time, you got to learn how to do uncomfortable stuff. You know what I mean? You got to do some stuff that you don't want to do, but it's necessary for you to do. And that was the evolution of me at that point, because, you know, I dealt with the depression, I dealt with the anxiety, and I didn't know that that was the stuff that I was dealing with. For me, it was just like, man, I'm just not in the mood. I'm not, you know, I couldn't watch football. Like, after I was done, I couldn't watch it. I didn't want to be around it.
Right.
Couldn't coach it. Like, everybody's like, why you don't coach? I'm like, dude.
Hey, y'all sorry, man. That's why I'm not coaching.
That too. But, you know.
I get it.
But a big part of it was that, you know, I just didn't have the identity anymore.
Right.
Right. So it was like I took that my ego was fragile at the time. So it's like, you know, you walking around, it's like, well, what's the one job that I have that I received something back from it? And that was fatherhood. Right. So it's like, as me showing up as a father every day, my son receives that love. He, you know, gives it back to me, and it was like something that I could feed off of, where everything else was just either taking from me or just wasn't giving me something back. So yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That is.
So
That's deep.
the role that you're in is not necessarily like a normal role. Like, not all NFL teams have that.
Right.
So, you know, to be able to have this is is a big kudos to the organization.
Absolutely.
Is it something where you are working to create this role as you're working in it, or is it like a roadmap or something like that's out there already?
Yeah. So in my role, it's more of, I'm working under the vision of my boss, which is Shannon Jordan, who is phenomenal. I mean, I love learning under her. She is a wealth of knowledge. But, you know, when I interviewed for the job, it was really her painting her vision for me, and then me understanding how my skill sets work to make that, you know, that vision a reality.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. And so I think that was, for me, it was important, because I didn't want to come in and say, hey, you get free range to just do whatever, because I don't know the organization. And the one thing that I didn't understand was that I didn't know the NFL the way that people think they know the NFL, right? So I know football, I know X's and O's, I can tell you what goes on the field, what the coach is thinking,
Right.
But I didn't know what really took place in the front office. I didn't know how all those things work to make sure that a product gets put out there, you know, that's not on the field, but sometimes all that backstory and all the back work that goes on. And so, you know, for me, when I got there, it was overwhelming at first. You know, I'm sitting in my first meeting, I'm like, oh, it's a lot, right?
It's a lot.
And I thought
during COVID, which is not a traditional way to onboard to a new role.
Exactly, right? So, you know, all of that was definitely, you know, a part of that process. But it was definitely, you know, I always felt welcome when I came into the organization. It was just like a family. So that automatically just became something that I was like, okay, well, at least I'm not in this alone, right?
Right.
You know, I'm supported. I feel as though the people have the best interest for me, and they obviously have bought into, you know, the skill sets that I bring with me. So I always felt like that was, you know, important for me to have.
That's dope, man.
Yeah.
And it's just showing just a lot of people are really, just I guess organizations, right, NBA and NFL, are showing that mental health is a really big component of what makes these athletes perform at a higher level. And you have, you know, like Brandon Marshall, Ricky Williams, even our own Liz Cambays, right? Like Paul George, don't start with him.
Devin, I'm gonna need your help on that. We might talk.
Yeah, I mean, we can jump into that, but it's just a focus in like how that mental aspect, you know, because you talk about people that compete at a high level. They even talk about having those coaches that they get into that mental game where they play it mentally. Right. So that's a big component about it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And maybe that's what Paul George.
Like I said, man, I'm gonna need your help on Paul George, man. I really am.
Yeah.
So, with your role, it's about kind of building relationships, man. So, kind of how do you feel about just not strategies of building relationships, but the importance of just building relationships in general as a person?
Right. And I think that is the part that I was probably just I wasn't sure of how, you know, my position would come off to the guys that I was working with. Right. I was so used to working previously with young adults and teenagers, you know, and I knew that I could use a lot of that to my benefit of just being who I am. Right. So I could tell stories. I could, you know, do all those different things. You know, I could relate to them on the music and all that stuff. But one thing I came in and I was like, you know, I definitely want to make sure that these guys realize that I'm here for them. Right. And it wasn't just a job. It wasn't just something for a career builder. Like I was going to show up every day and give them the best of what they, you know, what I have. And, you know, just coming in and having conversations with guys, and they just took to me, right? It's just like they see you and they're like, man, like I share a little bit of my story, and they're like, oh man, you came through the organization, like, oh, you play ball, oh, okay, right? And it's just like, man, like, and some of them I'll get on the call and they already did their homework on me. They're like, yeah, those Ragin Cajuns. I'm like, man, yeah. I'm like, so
That's dope.
it's to me, that's the important part of my job. The most important part of my job is those relationships, because it's during those hard times where somebody can reach out to you and say, hey, listen, I need to know about this for a family member or for myself. And, without that relationship, that person may hold off until it becomes something that I can't even,
Right.
When they're too deep in the hole, right?
Exactly. So, I think that's the part of the job right now that, still in the early phases of that, making sure that we reach every alumni, but I want to make sure that I speak to every single one of them individually and have that, that
That's
relationship
awesome.
with them. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's big time.
All right, well, we're going to get into these quick hits sponsored by Thick Fit. So when it comes to your health, it starts in the kitchen. Thick Fit Meal Prep is here to help you along the journey. They provide healthy, delicious meals that are easy, on the go, and fit everyone's lifestyle. Call 702-850-3388 or follow them on Instagram at Thick Fit Meal Prep. Use the code #Black and get an additional meal. And that's Thick Fit Meal Prep. Go ahead, Miles. Hit them with them quick hits.
All right, Devin. First time, if ever, that you were starstruck.
Oh man, Randy Moss. I was in high school, and I was at I think he was teammates. He was playing for the Patriots. And they had a camp in West Palm. It was Heath Evans, a fullback.
Yeah.
And he brought Randy Moss out there and Vince Wilfork, and I seen Randy Moss on the cart.
Okay.
And he was just driving, and he made eye contact with me, and he just like gave me one of them, and I was like, yo, that was Randy Moss. So I think that was the first time I really got starstruck.
There you go.
You wine connoisseur kind of. So you like a sweet guy wine, or are you like dry?
No homo.
I'm a cab guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. Top 5 Florida born players. So this is like your Mount Rushmore of football, Florida guys from Florida.
Ooh, God.
5. This is a tough question.
Okay.
That's a deep.
Well, you can put me on there. You can only need 4 more.
I got 5. Okay, so
Let's go.
Yep.
I'm
Make sure you check them off.
I
got
grew up
them
a
too.
Hurricane. I gotta
Okay.
put them in order.
Yeah.
Good
No,
man.
you don't have to put them on.
Okay.
I'm just the
Good
names.
man.
is what I
Hurricane.
like.
well,
There you go. Throw it there.
Number 1 is gonna be Sean Taylor, the greatest football player I've ever
Okay.
seen.
Yeah,
touch
all
a
day.
field.
All day we with that.
Yeah.
Next.
Hard to add that name, but yeah,
Second,
that's
Ray Lewis.
good. Yep.
Easy one, yeah.
I would say 3rd. The best that I've seen. It's gonna be hard for me to pick a Seminole. Deion Sanders.
Yeah,
I
got
gotta
to.
pick
You
Deion
have
on
to
there.
put him on there.
I'm biased. I gotta put Hester on there.
I agree. It's a Hall of
And
Famer.
number 5, man, a guy I think that doesn't get enough credit for who he was, Vince Wilfork, was one of the best athletes I've ever seen.
Wow.
I mean, the man is the size of 2 refrigerators. So,
It rocks overalls.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm telling you, that's the first image that comes to my mind.
When you
is
see, that's
Vince-
exactly it.
Yeah.
the overall.
Honorable mention, Ocho Cinco.
Ocho.
Yeah.
So we left off some Michael Irvin.
I mean, yeah.
This is your
This
Mount
is
Rushmore.
your list,
Right.
but
I mean, yeah. Michael Irvin, I mean, sure.
Yeah, he gonna,
said
he,
sure.
gonna, he gonna yell his way on the mountain.
Uh-huh.
So, all right. Love
one.
or basketball or the wood?
The Wood. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good choice.
Yeah.
All right. Name
Love it.
association real quick. So the first thing that comes to mind when I name off these words.
Okay.
Father,
Love.
football,
Passion.
youth,
Important.
mindset.
Everything.
woo, let's go. I like that. All right. So we're going to jump right into the winner's circle, man. Here's this the platform where we get to talk about just the great things you're doing, what's next. And, today you wanted to speak and you're rocking your wares, but inspire you and inspire youth.
Yep.
So kind of get into telling us what those are. I'll let you start there.
Yeah. So Inspire You is more recent, but I'll kind of talk about Inspire Youth.
Okay.
So Inspire Youth started 3 years ago. This was at the point where I had worked in all these different agencies and realized that I was, being utilized for all the characteristics that I had and skill sets that I had. And I realized I couldn't maximize that working in an organization. And so I decided I wanted to start my own. And so obviously everything that I was already doing was showing up in the work, through the organizations that I was working for. But I felt like I couldn't market myself. I couldn't do certain things because of the organization. So I started it at the same time that I started my master's program. And so that was August of 2017. And so I told myself that while I'm in this master's program, this is going to be business school, right? You got to give yourself the knowledge, the tools, and everything to run an organization and build an organization. And so for 3 years, I pretty much did that, where we were educating kids about mental health. And so being non-traditional in the sense where I'm not speaking from, the lens of a therapist, but I'm speaking to somebody with life experience, but also, someone who's worked in the field and using, the clients that I've had as well as their experiences. So I would do workshops. I would go out in the community and speak to, the experiences. I would speak to parents and just be a resource in the community. That was really the biggest thing, was to be an advocate and, to make sure that the kids realize that, mental health is not something that, we have to shy away from and not talk about. And so that was what I, started, and that was like my baby. That was, in my mind, I'm like, 10 years from now, we'll have all these different things in place and I can retire. Right. So
there you go.
That was the thinking going into it. And then around the last part of last year, as I got closer to graduation, I wanted to get back into sports. And it was like, I finally felt like I had something to bring to sports that I felt comfortable bringing, that wasn't just, as a coach or anything like that. And I was like, hey, if I could do something around mental health and athletics, obviously that would kind of restore my passion, right? And I tell people all the time, it's like, football was my first love, and it became that girlfriend that broke my heart. And like, I still check for her, but, the relationship just wasn't there anymore.
Right.
So, I kind of wanted to rekindle things, but it just didn't seem like I had any opportunities. And I wind up going to I presented a proposal for a conference called the Black Student Athlete Summit. It's a pretty dope conference. I think they're doing it virtually this year. And, I wanted to present on post-transition sports depression, the experiences of athletes once they transition out of sports. And I wind up getting 50 former collegiate athletes to fill out a survey to get information on what was their experience after they were done playing. And so I took that information, that data, and put it in like a poster presentation and presented it at the conference. And, I went there independently, on my own. All the other people were there with other schools, big time programs. They stayed in a nice hotel. But, in my mind, I always was like telling myself like, yo, something's going to come out of this.
Right.
Right. And I just didn't know what it was. I said, even if it's just, acknowledgement, but something's going to come out of this. And I wind up the last day of the conference, having to check out of my hotel. I get there late and I'm at the wrong place, at the conference. And this is at UT, at University of Texas. So their campus is huge.
Massive.
Yeah. And so I'm walking across the campus and I see this girl coming out at the same time. And she's like, hey, they moved the conference to the other side of the campus. And I'm like, I got everything with me. I'm like, yo, God. She was like, yo, I'll help you carry something. So I gave her the poster presentation. We start talking about that, and I bring up, my story or whatever, just 10, 15-minute conversation. And so from that conversation, at the end of the conference, they had brought student athletes with them. I had some T-shirts I wanted to give out that I didn't give away, so I gave it to those student athletes, and also the young lady. So her name is Kiera McClendon. Shout out to her. So I get home probably 3 days after I leave that conference was my birthday. So I went skydiving on my birthday, and I just wanted to do something that I felt like, yo, you got to just face fear at this point. Like everything. Yeah.
How was that?
That's a different Capricorn gene because I ain't got it.
That was probably the most. I never felt more alive in my life. That's what my
homeboy said. That's something you have to do.
It's something that it will. Listen, man. It'll have you. It'll push your mind to a different point, because it was sitting on that plane, and when we started going up, I just started sweating. I'm like, I'm like, yo, okay. And I advise you, if you go, jump first, because if you see somebody come out that plane and they disappear, it's like they just come out and they just gone. Go first. So I was second. So when I saw that person,
you witnessed it.
I'm scooting up, they moving me up, and I'm like, all right. And I just see somebody just go out and they just disappeared in the cloud. I said, oh my God. And I never felt more alive in my life. So when I landed, the first thing I do is I go to my car to get my phone, and I saw a message from her, and it was the job. she had sent me the job on Instagram. The girl that I met at the conference, she had messaged me the job.
Wow.
And was like, hey, I remember you said, something about the Raiders and you're a social worker. This is the job. And I saw it. I just wanted to send it to you. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Full circle.
Right. And so I'm like, you playing. And wind up, I was supposed to go out that night. I wound up just filling out the application that night, redoing, like sprucing up my resume, doing a cover letter, everything. And I submitted that stuff. And, it was a long 6-month process because COVID and everything.
Right.
And, once everything kind of settled and, everything just kind of worked. And I just had this feeling like, I said, listen, if you don't get this job, it's like, it can't be. Like, it doesn't exist if you don't get it, right? Like, they're going to have to pull the whole job out because if you don't get it, then,
somebody got to see you.
Right. Like, it's going to be tough. And, to get that call, it was like draft day. I was at my mom's house.
Dang.
And it was like draft day 8 years later. I remember getting the call, and I'm like looking at my mom like, yo, this the call.
This is it.
And when they told me I got the job, like, okay. And it just hit me, man. And everything that either took place before then just all kind of rushed in. And man, it was just one of those moments where, to have that moment and celebrate it with my family, that was everything.
Man, I gotta salute you on that. For jumping out that plane, but more importantly, man, that's crazy how life works in this kind of full circle and it all wraps together, man. Yeah. I want to get into a broad kind of question because you work with youth. I'm gonna butcher this a little bit, but I had a moment in 7th and 8th grade where my dad calls it do not. He says, you do not play sports, you do not do homework, you do not clean up, you just do not, right? Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, I was in that moment. I just didn't do anything. Didn't talk to girls, didn't do anything, just didn't do anything.
Yeah. Do not.
And I don't know what the label was for it at that point.
Right.
Obviously I grew up in the church, so it was like, hey, we're going to pray, get on your knees.
Correct.
Right? So, like, I don't know if it was a mental trauma. I don't know. I grew up in a 2-parent household, whatever the case. So I can't put a name on it, right? So we're dealing with young men, particularly black young men, that maybe we just don't know how to voice that at an early age in life. How do you deal with that?
Man, it's so important to understand how important emotional language is, right? And so that taps into like emotional intelligence a little bit too, where I see clients on the side, still on the weekends. I set time apart to make sure that I'm still available for black and brown kids like or young adults as well. But for me, it's important because that was the reason I got started, and so I don't ever want to be in a position where I feel like I'm too big to do certain things,
or abandon them, right? They have that feeling as well, right?
Exactly. That's also a part of their a lot of their stories. So being able to verbalize what we're feeling is everything. You know what I mean? Because if I can't put words to how I'm feeling, then it just leaves everything up in the air to like, somebody could give me how I feel. Somebody could tell me how I feel. And so that's why when we hear a lot of young men talk about anger, it's like they're comfortable with that emotion because that's the emotion that everybody uses for them, right? So they embrace that. Like, I'm angry. I'm you know what I mean? You tell me that long enough, I'm gonna be angry, right?
Right.
And so understanding that anger is a secondary emotion. Like, it's not the first emotion that, you're experiencing, like you're expressing, because usually there's either like shame or, not getting a need that you really need like met, like all those different things that bottle up that turns into anger over time. And so, when you have a whether it be a father figure or somebody that you hold to a high regard, tell you things about yourself, especially when you don't have the identity to be able to say, hey, like, I know exactly who I am.
That's not me, right?
Right. You know what I mean? I can't take that information and say, nah, he's wrong. You know what I mean? It's going to leave an imprint on me. And that's the thing about, negative bias is that, the stuff that is negativity seems to stick to us like Velcro, right?
Yeah.
I'll remember the things that somebody said negative about me. I want the praise, like you telling me how great I am and all that stuff. Like, that's going to go over my head. It's like Teflon. It's going to bounce off. Like, I don't carry that with me, but it's the stuff that people said that were negative about me. That's the stuff that I sit there and, I'm wrestling with. I'm like, yo, man, am I that person? Like, am I that?
Yeah.
Like, dang. So I think when when young men, especially like when you're shown all these different elements of manhood, whether it's from media, whether it's from your household, whether it's from the people
social media,
right? You know what I mean? Like, you're trying to decide on what exactly are you trying to become?
Right.
And so when someone's trying to tell you who you are, or somebody is like leaving clues for you to try to figure out who you are, it makes you feel confused. And so a lot of the young men that I work with, man, they had those experiences, and that was also my experience. You know, I was a late bloomer. I didn't understand a lot of stuff when I was in middle school. You know, going to class and everybody's talking, you know, they heard that Ludacris song, and I'm like, what Ludacris song? You know what I mean? My mom had us listening to Radio Disney and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm listening to NSYNC and all this stuff. These kids over here listening to "Wanna Be a Baller" Shot Caller. I'm like, what song is that? And I'll never forget that. I was in 4th grade. I'll never forget this. I was in 4th grade. I was a little husky. So I was probably like 115 in 4th grade. And I couldn't play with my weight class. Like, this was my first year playing football. So I wound up playing with 7th and 8th graders in 4th grade, my first year playing. And they had me at like fullback or something like that. I don't even remember what position I was playing. They was like, listen, when you go in on defense, go in the last part of the line. And then when you go in on offense, just get in the backfield, just move out the way, hit somebody. And I remember being around 7th and 8th graders, and their conversations were different. Like,
yeah.
I'm talking about Dragon Ball Z. They talking about all kind of stuff. And I'm just like, man, like, what are their parents like? You know, I'm thinking like, is this going on in their household? But it was their environment. You know what I mean? Like, I had an environment where my mom, you know, she did her best to protect us. Like, you can't go certain places, you can't do certain things. And, you know, for them, it was like, yo, exposure to everything that's around you. So, you know, for me, it was like, that was my introduction into understanding like, oh, I'm raised different. You know what I mean? But you don't understand it like that. You're thinking, oh, my mom is doing this or she's doing that. But in reality, that was her way of protecting and trying to, you know, keep your innocence in a way, right?
Yes.
Good stuff.
So 2 things. One, so I saw on your website you had the PTSD, and I was like, oh, you trying to coin a phrase? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, switch it up. But it's like a real thing. And like, I understand that like a lot of athletes have it. You know, we talk about it all the time. Me and MH, people we bring on the show, it's a definite, you know, issue. It's there. It's a concern when guys leave the game at all levels. But the higher you go, the higher that risk is. So, how are you like developing or understanding that, and what are some of the tools that you're using to evolve that? Because like you were on this early on, because you were talking about when you're going to this, what was it, the Black Student Conference, you were already talking about that. So how's that developing? How are you helping people transition through that?
You know, it started from my experience, right? So I didn't understand it to be what it was at the time, because I didn't have that language to sit there and say, hey, listen, I think I'm going through a little depression. Like, you know, at the time, I'm thinking, all right, I'm stressed out from work. I'm stressed out from this. I'm stressed out from that. I'm thinking about all the stresses in my life, and I'm thinking all of this is just a combination of all this stuff happening at once. But it was really like I never was able to process the fact that how football ended for me, right?
Yes.
You know, and I think a lot of guys, they don't ever take time to think about how it ended. Like, they know it ended. They remember, like, you know what I mean?
Man.
You know, and it's a tough reality to sit there and try to, you know, process.
I'm laughing
like,
with you, man.
Yeah, man.
Something like that.
It's tough.
I'm
right?
still hurt.
Right. And, you know,
Turn this game off.
Right. You know what? We may have to put him on. We got the couch over there. Maybe
there's some
give him a little quick
racquetball
session and put him on the couch a little bit.
Some racquetball on or something.
But man, it's a tough reality. And so, you know, for me, I was isolated. You know, I moved to a part of Florida that I wasn't originally from, you know, to be with my son's mom. And, you know, we were engaged. We were like 23 and engaged, and all these different things that look good on social media. I won't lie to you. It looked good on social media, right?
Right.
But the reality was I wasn't happy with the idea of who I was becoming, because I felt like I was 35 years old and I'm 23. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, you know what I mean? I'm trying to figure this out for
like,
myself.
how did I get here? Like, what is this?
You know, and because I always dreamed in these in like visions, I always kind of saw myself in roles. And it was like the first time I didn't see myself, I didn't recognize myself. And so, you know, I gained weight, all the different things that come with, you know, I didn't want to touch a weight. I used to get triggered. I'd go in the weight room and smell weights, and it would just like trigger me. Right. So it was really like a PTSD. It was like I was traumatized by all the things that I had to do in the way that it was taken away from me, in a sense. Right. And I think a lot of times that experience, when it happens to those players, it's like, how do I normalize what I'm experiencing when nobody around me has done what I've done?
Right.
Right. Because the reality is, everybody that knew me already had their mindset that, hey, when you go to the league, don't forget about me. You know, all the stuff that comes out, right?
Right.
And then when you're left with that experience, nobody's coming like, man, how you doing without football? Like, nobody ever asked me that. Like, how you doing without football? Like, nah. Like, what you doing now? Oh, that's what's up. That's a good look. You know what I mean? Or they'll tell you some stuff like, you know, or pass you, you know, stuff like, man, I wish you would have made it, bro.
Yeah.
Man, we really thought you was gonna make it, boy.
Me too.
right. Like you had us going for a while, like, you know, and to me it was just like, man, those like backhanded compliments in a sense, right? Because it's like, man, like I grew up on Section 8. You know, I'm one of 6 kids. I'm not supposed to, based on statistics, I'm not supposed to be doing the things that I was able to do.
Right.
But to me, it was like everybody's not seeing that as enough, and so it challenged me to think, is it enough? Like, did I do enough? Did I beat the odds really? And so I think it like challenges your narrative of what you believe, and so I think that was where that struggle was kind of, you know, or was definitely rooted in. It was that.
Man. So time flies when you're having fun, man. I do want you to kind of give up, you know, where they can reach out and learn more about, you know, the 2 branches. So go ahead and give those websites and social media out. We're going to put it in the show notes as well.
Absolutely. So Inspire Youth is the nonprofit organization. We also call it Inspire Youth Services, but Inspire Youth just is pretty much the umbrella of which we do all of the mental health education for underserved communities. Inspire You is where we do consulting around mental health and athletics. And so, you know, really to just be able to go into whether it's athletic programs or, you know, universities, to be able to speak to, you know, the experiences around mental health and the education around mental health for athletes, but really just to be an advocate and a resource for those communities.
Oh, that's amazing, man. So like I said, we'll definitely put those in the show notes so you can reach out, and of course you're at NFL Social Work, and you know all of that stuff's tagged as well. Yeah. All right, so now we've come to the assist. This is where you get to drop that coaching jewel or that nugget, you know, words to live by. So really quick, give us a quote, a mantra, or words you live by, or something you would tell your younger self.
And the one I've been in my head for the last couple of days is that you don't have to know what your passion is yet to be passionate, right? Sometimes you just got to show up and be passionate. Like, you'll never know what you wind up being on the other end of that because you decide that this is not your passion or this is not your lane. But if you show up every day and are just passionate about the things that you're doing, eventually your passion will sneak up on you and then you'll find it. So,
boom.
Yeah.
There it is. Show up. I love it. Absolutely. All right, man. Well, like I said, time flies when you're having fun, and you know we want to thank our guest, man. D, thank you for coming on, man.
I appreciate y'all having me, man.
Absolutely.
This is amazing.
Paul George at NFL Social Work.
Thank you to people for listening. I hope you guys have fun. Please follow the show. Give us that feedback. Let us know who you want on the show. Like the show, we're Black in Sports on all your favorite social media handles, and we are Black in Sports Podcast. Don't forget, every Tuesday we drop our short form, The Locker Room, anywhere you listen to podcasts. And just remember, stay safe, practice gratitude, and we're rooting for you.
Screaming, all us blacks got is sports and entertainment until we even.
Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yo. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Snap out to racks on handmade new rags. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. That's everybody from sports to college class.